Close Encounter in the Desert. I'm an amateur astronomer, always had a fascination with the sky and the universe beyond. I'd spend countless nights with my telescope, gazing at distant stars, hoping to spot something extraordinary. One night, my wish came true, though not in a way I ever expected. I live in Arizona, a state known for clear skies and sprawling deserts, a perfect place for stargazing. One evening, I decided to drive out to my favorite spot, far from the city lights. The night was clear, and the Milky Way was splashed across the sky like a cosmic masterpiece. Hours ticked by as I lost myself in the celestial spectacle. It was around 2 a.m. when I noticed something peculiar. A bright, flickering light moving erratically across the sky. It wasn't a plane or a shooting star. It was something different. Curiosity piqued. I adjusted my telescope and tried to get a closer look. The light was blinding, like nothing I'd seen before. Suddenly it zipped across the sky at an impossible speed and disappeared. But that wasn't the end. Moments later I heard a strange humming sound, and the ground beneath me started to vibrate. Fear slowly crept in as I scanned the horizon trying to find the source. That's when I saw it, a massive, glowing object descending towards the desert floor. My mind was racing. Could it be aliens? I'd heard of sightings and encounters in the desert, but I had always been skeptical. Yet, here I was, watching a UFO land in the middle of nowhere. Gripped by fear and fascination, I decided to investigate. I grabbed my flashlight and cautiously approached the landing site. As I got closer, the hum became louder, almost deafening. Suddenly, my flashlight flickered and died. All electronics in my bag, including my phone, had stopped working. I was engulfed in darkness, save for the eerie glow emanating from the object. Then I saw them, beings unlike anything I could ever imagine. Their bodies glowed faintly, radiating a soft, otherworldly light. They were tall, much taller than an average human, with elongated limbs and large, almond-shaped eyes that seemed to reflect the starlight. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was face to face with extraterrestrial beings. Terrified, I hid behind a nearby rock formation, peering at the spectacle unfolding before me. The beings moved around gracefully, their motions fluid and unlike any human movements. They seemed to be collecting samples from the desert, taking interest in the cacti, rocks, and even the sand. As I watched, one of the beings turned and looked directly at my hiding spot. I froze. It stood still for a moment, its large eyes seemingly looking into my soul. Then, to my surprise, it simply turned back and continued its work. It felt as if it knew I was there, but didn't perceive me as a threat. I must have sat there for hours, watching them. Eventually, they stopped their work and returned to their glowing craft. The hum intensified, and the object began to lift off the ground, quickly disappearing into the night sky, leaving me alone in the desert. The humming ceased, and my electronics started working again. As if on cue, my phone started ringing. It was a friend, probably wondering why I hadn't returned home yet. I ignored the call, still trying to process what I had witnessed. The drive home was a blur. My mind was filled with images of the tall beings and their glowing craft. I was in shock, disbelief, and awe. I had always dreamt of making contact with alien life, but I never thought it would happen so close to home. When I told my friends about the encounter, they laughed it off, suggesting it was probably a dream or a hallucination due to exhaustion. But I know what I saw. It wasn't a dream. It was real as the desert sand beneath my feet. Since that night, I've returned to the desert many times, always hoping to see them again. I've yet to have another encounter, but I keep looking. The night sky doesn't just house stars and planets, but secrets and beings far beyond our understanding. My encounter with the extraterrestrial changed me. It's one thing to look at the stars and wonder if we're alone. It's entirely different to have that question answered in the most extraordinary way possible. It was terrifying. It was exciting. It was out of this world. Lost hours on a lonely road. I'm a long-haul trucker, always been. I've seen some strange things on those lonely stretches of highway, but nothing compares to what happened on a route through Nevada one night. The evening started off as usual. I checked over my rig, made sure the load was secure, then hit the road. My destination was Salt Lake City, a straight shot up the I-15, I'd done this route many times, so I expected nothing out of the ordinary. Around midnight, I was driving through a particularly deserted stretch, just me and the hum of the engine. That's when I saw it, a bright flash of light in the sky. At first I thought it was lightning, but the sky was clear. Then, the flash got brighter, intense enough that it hurt my eyes. I had to pull over, it was so blinding. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the light vanished, plunging the world back into normalcy. Confused, I looked at the truck's clock. It was nearly 2 a.m. How was that possible? It felt like only minutes had passed since the light first appeared. I shrugged it off as a mistake. Maybe the clock malfunctioned, and continued my journey. As I was nearing Salt Lake City, things started to feel wrong. I was receiving frantic calls from the dispatcher. He was demanding to know where I'd been. According to him, it was already morning, and I was several hours late. My truck's clock confirmed it. It was 9 a.m. The lost hours made no sense. I couldn't have fallen asleep. I had no memory of stopping for a break. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I remembered the bright light. Could that have something to do with it? I delivered the cargo, but my mind was elsewhere. The lost hours haunted me. It wasn't just the dispatcher's report or the truck's clock. Even my body felt the effects. I was hungry, tired, as though I'd been up all night. I needed answers. I started researching, digging into stories of similar occurrences. That's when I stumbled upon the phenomenon of missing time, a common element in many alleged alien abduction stories. The more I read, the more the pieces fell into place. Bright lights, missing time, confusion, all of these were symptoms reported by others who claimed to have had encounters with aliens. A cold sense of dread washed over me as I realized what might have happened. I searched for physical evidence, something to confirm my fears. There was nothing. No strange marks on my body, no damage to my truck. Just the missing hours that I couldn't account for. But sometimes, the lack of evidence is as damning as the evidence itself. Days turned into weeks. I was having trouble sleeping, plagued by nightmares of bright lights and lost time. I kept questioning myself, trying to convince myself it was all a trick of the mind, but the missing hours were a fact I couldn't ignore. In my desperation for answers, I decided to see a hypnotherapist, someone specializing in recovering lost memories. I was skeptical, but I had nothing to lose. Under hypnosis, I began to recall fragments of what happened during those lost hours. I was surrounded by blinding light, then a sensation of floating. I was in a room, not my truck, a room filled with an intense, humming sound. I wasn't alone. There were figures, not human, observing me. The memory was hazy, as if seen through a thick fog. But it was there. After the session, I was in a state of shock. The therapist suggested these could be repressed memories of an encounter, possibly an abduction. But why? Why would they choose me? The following days were hard. Coming to terms with what I had experienced, what I had remembered, was like trying to accept a new reality. I was no longer just a trucker, I was an abductee. To this day, I still don't have all the answers. I don't know why it happened or what they wanted from me. All I know is that one night on a lonely stretch of highway, something took me, took hours from me, and left me with a new, terrifying understanding of the universe. Since that night, I've never seen the open road the same way again. Every flash of light makes my heart pound. Every lonely stretch of highway reminds me of the missing hours. But I keep driving, always looking to the sky, wondering if they will return. The message from the stars. I've always been a night owl, preferring the quiet solitude of the night over the hustle and bustle of the day. This preference led to my hobby, amateur radio. I love the idea of being able to reach out to people across the globe from my little setup in my apartment in New York City. One night, after a particularly dull conversation with a ham radio enthusiast from Australia, I began scanning frequencies out of boredom. I was about to shut down the radio when I caught something. A faint repetitive signal on a rarely used frequency. Curiosity piqued. I tuned into the signal. It was a pattern of short and long pulses, much like Morse code. Being a radio enthusiast, I was familiar with Morse code, but the signal didn't translate into anything recognizable. I quickly started recording the signal, hoping to decipher it later. After hours of analyzing the recording, I was left with more questions than answers. The signal didn't match any known code or language. It was entirely unique, yet it had a clear structure and pattern, suggesting it was a form of communication. Days turned into weeks as I immersed myself in deciphering the signal. I hardly ate or slept. My mind was consumed with the mystery. I posted the signal online, reaching out to fellow radio enthusiasts, linguists, even cryptographers. But no one could provide a definitive answer. Then, one night, as I was poring over the signal, something clicked. I noticed a pattern that reminded me of something I had studied in college, the Drake equation. It was a probabilistic argument used to estimate the number of active, communicative extraterrestrial civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. Could it be? Was the signal a message from an alien civilization? The mere thought seemed ludicrous, but the more I compared the signal to the Drake equation, the more sense it made. The signal wasn't a message in the traditional sense. It was a mathematical representation of the equation. The realization was startling. I double-checked, triple-checked my work. The correlation was undeniable. Someone, or rather something, had transmitted the Drake equation across the cosmos, and I had received it. The implications were enormous. This could be the first proof of intelligent alien life, the answer to one of humanity's biggest questions. But who would believe me? A radio enthusiast in New York claiming to have received an alien transmission? I decided to reach out to SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. I explained my discovery, provided them with the signal and my analysis. Days passed with no response. I began to lose hope, thinking they dismissed my claim as a joke. Then one morning, I received a call from a SETI scientist. They were intrigued by my findings and had begun analyzing the signal themselves. Over the next few weeks, I worked closely with SETI, verifying the signal, providing additional data. The day finally came when SETI confirmed my findings. The signal did indeed correlate with the Drake equation. They believed, as I did, that the signal was likely from an extraterrestrial source. The news was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. News of the discovery spread quickly. I was thrust into the spotlight, interviewed by news outlets, invited to speak at scientific conferences. My quiet, nocturnal life was turned upside down. But amidst the chaos, when I found a moment of solitude, I'd look up at the night sky. It was no longer just a blanket of stars. It was a cosmos teeming with potential life, with civilizations reaching out across the vast distances, hoping to be heard.